BMW X1 has always represented BMW's smallest non-coupe SUV, as well as the cheapest crossover in their lineup. For 2024, the X1 lineup has been expanded to include its first ever M version. It's not a full-on M car, but an M Sport model in the form of this X1 M35i. So today we're going to take a look to see how well BMW has brought M characteristics into its smallest and most affordable crossover. In terms of styling, I think BMW nailed this third generation X1. It's very upright, aggressive, and bold, definitely better looking than the first two generations, and I think it even looks better than the new X3. And for this M35 model, they brought a bit more of aggressiveness into the styling, which I think looks quite good. You have these low profile tires on 20-inch rims, a bit more of an aggressive rear diffuser, as well as quad exhaust tips, and I also love this blue paint. In terms of increased performance, because this isn't just a sport appearance package, there is more power, although the engine is just an upgraded version of the standard X1's powertrain. In the standard X1, this 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder produces 241 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. In this X1 M35i, it produces 313 horsepower and the same 295 pound-feet of torque. So about 72 more horsepower and the same torque figure. So that's a healthy boost in power, something you're definitely going to notice, and BMW claims the 0 to 60 times have dropped about a full second from the standard X1, from 6.2 to about 5.3, although on the outside this engine doesn't necessarily sound the most aggressive. All right, climbing into the BMW X1. Now, despite it kind of looking like a BMW X3 on the outside, it is here in the second row that you're going to remember that this is a subcompact crossover and not a compact crossover. It's just a bit more cramped here in the back. Although that being said, I at 6'2" do fit behind my ideal driving position with just enough knee room, actually plenty of foot room, and just enough headroom even with this panoramic sunroof. Overall, it is, it's just a bit more claustrophobic back here than it would be in the back of the X3, but you can fit 4 full-size adults in this vehicle, no problem. Lowering the center armrest reveals a pair of cup holders. You have dual air vents in the back of the center console, although no second row climate control zone, and you have dual USB-C charging outlets, and it is overall the same quality in the seats as up front, and I can fit back here, no problem. But the X3 would be a bit larger, of course. All right, but it is up front that you are going to be spending most of your time if you are buying a BMW X1, and overall, I really like it. You have a fully digital instrument cluster that is connected to your large infotainment system, all of its screens, obviously. You also have a heads-up display, and the overall design is both intricate but also modern. I do like the design on these Harman Kardon speaker covers. The door latch itself I think is pretty unique, and when you close the door, it feels very solid. It's a good thud. I like that. I also really like the steering wheel. I think it's a cool look, and I like how thick it is. It's a very substantial feeling steering wheel, which I think helps add to this car's, M performance design. It feels like you're captaining a substantial vehicle down the road. There's also plenty of physical controls on the steering wheel, which I like. Volume up, you can change your stuff with your music and your cruise control. And there's also a few more physical buttons down here in the center console. You have an interesting gear selector that you push forward for reverse, pull back for drive, and then you have to press the parking brake in order to put the car in park. That's also where your start-stop system is. So those are all things I like. Plenty of storage as well, and I think these seats are comfortable. You only get adjustable lumbar support on the driver's seat, not on the passenger seat, which is a bit of a shame for a $60,000 vehicle, because that is how expensive this vehicle is. I also don't believe there are heated seats or a heated steering wheel in this car. At least I haven't been able to find it, and that's also a bit of a shame, again, for the price point. Things that I don't love about this interior, a lot of the controls are in this touchscreen. Like your climate controls, all of those you have to go into the screen. Just requires a few more presses of taps of the screen than I would like, and I just find using a screen a bit more difficult than physical controls while driving. I much prefer physical controls. Also, you have to do wireless CarPlay, I believe, and the connection between my phone and this car hasn't been very steady. There's been a few times where it's dropped, and even if it does successfully pair, when I'm driving down the road, I'd say once every 5 to 10 minutes, if I'm listening to music, it just pauses for like 2-3 seconds before continuing on. Like the connection just isn't that stable. That's why I prefer USB wired CarPlay. Unfortunately, in BMWs, you have to go for wireless CarPlay. But overall, I do like the aesthetics. I think it's fun and futuristic, and pretty aggressive too. You have these red accented paddle shifters, the BMW M colors stitched into the steering wheel with an M logo, the red line at the top, almost like a Raptor as well, and these pretty aggressive bucket seats with Alcantara suede on the base. So overall, I really do like this aesthetic. You also have some open pore wood trim. There are just a few things I don't love, but on the whole, it is a very nice interior. All right, driving the BMW X1 M35i. Giving it some power here. Ooh, some crackles and pops, except none of those are real. You heard this car rev, you heard me rev it out, and so you know that all of these sounds that the car is making right now, in terms of the engine note, in terms of the upshifts, those are all fake. I was in sport mode when I was revving the car in the driveway in the earlier clip. I'm in sport mode now, so the car definitely sounds athletic and dynamic when you are driving in sport mode. Although knowing that it's fake is also a bit disappointing, because I mean, it's not crackling and popping like that on the downshifts in real life. Power down. Yeah, it's nice and linear, the acceleration actually. Once the turbos spool up, it does provide a good amount of thrust all the way to highway speeds. Once you hit about 70 miles an hour, that's kind of where the power begins to fade away. So it's plenty powerful, and at the same time as being plenty powerful, the car is also very efficient. Again, I averaged 32 mpg on the highway. In my time overall with the car, I've been about 30 mpg, so that's great for a crossover, especially, you know, a plenty powerful crossover. And it's still very comfortable, even though we're riding on 20-inch rims with pretty low profile. It still has a decent ride over, you know, pretty sharp roads or bad roads. You do get some sharp jolts into the cabin, but nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that you wouldn't expect from such low profile tires. And cabin noise, it's fine. I think you actually get the most noise from the wheels and the tires. Wind noise is kept to a minimum, but it's overall a very comfortable and easy vehicle to drive. It just, again, that the M-ness of this vehicle is the least M-ness, I think, of any BMW M Sport model that I have driven, and probably of any BMW in the lineup. And just as a result of this being the entry-level crossover and the entry-level M Sport model. Using the paddle shifters. They're not that responsive. But yeah, it definitely fast enough. Definitely faster than a standard car in this category. But the Delta is the smallest. Okay, talking about other driving dynamics in this vehicle, or other just dynamics of driving this vehicle, very comfortable. The seats are super supportive. Very, very happy with them. I do really like the steering wheel. I like how thick it is. It makes me feel like I'm driving a substantial vehicle. And at the same time, I'm constantly reminded how nimble this vehicle is, how maneuverable it is. It has a small footprint, and so driving around town, I feel very confident that I'm able to fit in, you know, tight parking spaces, whatnot. And at the same time, the styling on top of that still gives big SUV. So I like the balance that BMW has struck with. Even though this car has a small footprint, it is actually, well, that was a bit more aggressive in the sport mode. And the shifts are actually a lot more, when you are in the full sport mode, the shifts are a lot sharper. Very nice. That is actually a bit more impressive in the sport mode. You are getting a bit more of the M feelings when everything is set to sport mode. All of the settings kind of work together to give you the M feel. Things I don't really like about this vehicle. The infotainment system has been a bit slow sometimes. When I've started the car on, it doesn't turn on right away. It can be a bit laggy. and just a bit finicky to use, especially when you just turn the car on. CarPlay also I've had some issues with. My music will just cut out randomly and then come back a few seconds later. It's only wireless CarPlay. I prefer wired CarPlay because I find the connection more secure. And I've had the same issues with the infotainment system, with the instrument cluster. A couple times I've turned the car on and I've put the car in drive and just started driving, but these systems haven't woken up yet and they've taken about 30 seconds to actually turn on. And so I'm driving with no idea of what my speed is because the instrument cluster also hasn't fully turned on yet. So they're not the quickest, and you also have to go into them to adjust your climate controls, which again, I'm not a fan of. I would prefer physical climate controls. But on the whole, I'm not upset with them. It's just a couple times I've noticed that they're not the easiest to use systems. The sport mode of this car, it really does help make it feel a bit more aggressive. Off the line, you get a lot more power, and then the shifts are a lot more aggressive and they make you feel it, and the car just accelerates. It feels like it has more power in sport mode. The transmission is definitely more responsive, but that pumped in audio I'm not really a fan of that. That is a little cheesy in my opinion, although the sounds that this engine makes and the exhaust of this car in general are not that great. You know, there are OEMs that are putting out turbocharged four-cylinder vehicles that actually sound really good. Hyundai comes to mind with the Elantra N, and that car sounds really good on the outside, so that's not fake. I wish BMW had been able to do something like that with this car. But yeah, you know, this is kind of a dynamic, fun little sports crossover when you're in sports mode. It's interesting how big the changes between the drive modes of this vehicle, because it really softens when you're in like a more personalized mode that's not as sporty, or in the efficient mode. It really then just feels like a standard subcompact crossover. I'm impressed by the level of customizability in this vehicle, but yeah, not quite a fan of the fake exhaust noise. I wish the genuine exhaust of this vehicle, when you're revving it out, when you're just accelerating, I wish it genuinely sounded that good outside the car, but maybe then it wouldn't get as good a fuel economy. The overall chassis does feel pretty tight and rigid. You know, it's an SUV, so you are going to get some leaning in the bends. Overall, like where the center of gravity for this car is not as low as in a sedan, but I think BMW did an overall pretty good job with the chassis control. It does feel like a dynamic vehicle, and you can have some fun in this car. But again, the delta between this vehicle and the normal X1, which I haven't had the chance to drive yet, but you're only getting 70 fewer horsepower, torque remains the same. I don't think the performance differences are that big compared to, like, again, the 330i and the M340i, because you can't get a 6-cylinder in a non-M Sport BMW 3 Series, or also in the BMW X3, which you can in the M Sport model. Another thing to note on this BMW X1 M35i is that it has a boost mode, so if you pull the left paddle shifter, it does a 10-second countdown, and then when you floor it, you're getting maximum power, maximum performance out of this X1. And oh, there's some torque steer actually. When you floor this car in boost mode, you have to keep some grip on the steering wheel because it will get a little squirrely. I think this is a front-wheel drive based architecture, so it makes sense, although this is an all-wheel drive vehicle, but definitely punchy in the sport modes and in the boost mode. Still a 4-cylinder though, still a turbocharged 4-cylinder, and you're still getting some of those characteristics through even in the performance driving. So that's the 2024 BMW X1 M35i. I overall really like this vehicle. I think it looks incredible, has decent driving dynamics, and is still a rather fuel-efficient car. That being said, it has one big thing going against it, and that is its price. $60,000 is a lot for a subcompact crossover, especially when you consider the fact that you can get one of these vehicles for $10,000 less. I haven't had a chance to drive the new BMW X1 xDrive 28i, the non-M35i version of the new X1. I haven't had a chance to drive that. But I do wonder if this car and the increased performance, those 70 horsepower, really does constitute a $10,000 premium over the standard X1, because that car also has this vehicle's great looks, probably even more fuel efficiency, and all of the tech that you get in this car. So I think you would definitely need to test drive both this M35i model and the 28i model to see which one best suits you. Thanks for watching, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.